Okay, hey people, in case you haven't heard, Disney acquired Lucasfilm today, so very big news, and I wanted to make a video about it. And I enlisted the aid of a couple of experts whose knowledge on Star Wars is way greater than my own, so we're just going to get into this. So guys, do you want to give some initial reactions to this?
Change, it burns us.
Joy and horror mixture.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand I found it very exciting, more Star Wars movies. On the other hand, it's like, the Star Wars series, as it is right now, works very well. You've got corruption and redemption. So to tack on 3 more movies to that, it's like, are you really going to be telling a decent story that really adds to it? And will the series as a whole flow well with 3 extra movies? I mean, even if they are good stories, will it work within the larger series? So that's my main concern with this. And of course, the handling of the movies and everything else. So,
yeah, I think the extended universe is something that it's obviously been in full swing for several decades now. So I see 3 extra, and they've been able to be very, very successful. The Lucas Books is the subsidiary of Lucasfilm that used to handle that. Now also owned by Disney. And it was very successful. They had some really great stories, some better than others, of course. And just like some Star Wars movies are better than others, I think tacking on 3 movies at the end, it's not going to be so much as like having to tell a new epic so much as it is continuing what's already been done. I mean, they've already been able to come up with new storylines, is my point. And I think that seeing it in movie form would just be cooler for the fans instead of just reading. It would just be a new medium of storytelling. So LucasArts has branched out into, from films to video games, and that's been a really big and growing source, or rather medium of storytelling. And I think that the movies, starting that up again is just, it's just going to be more fun for the fans.
You guys bring up some good points. I mean, like Josiah said, there is already a lot of media out there in the time period after Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And all the stories have been told, but it's been a while. But I mean, it's all really interesting time period, and I'm looking forward to see what they do with it. But what I'm more concerned with it is how they're going to do it and who's doing it. So my initial reaction when I read that George Lucas was selling Lucasfilms, I was like, yes, he's selling it, thank God. But then it was like, to Disney. No.
Okay, so yeah, we could go into this whole Disney thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think people are a little bit too worried about Disney. I mean, Disney bought Marvel. Marvel's been doing fine. The Avengers was great, and they've helped to structure the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe and done that well. And Disney owns lots of things. They own ABC, they own ESPN, so Disney is pretty good at like putting people in place and letting them handle the things that need to be handled. And as far as the expanded universe goes, they own Marvel Comics, and they haven't been like putting their hand in Marvel to try to like throw Mickey Mouse into the Avengers or anything like that. So I don't think it's going to be like Disney-fied Star Wars or anything like that. And if you look at some of the other movies Disney's made, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, they're capable of making movies that aren't like for little kids especially. So I'm not concerned about Disney so much as I'm just concerned in general about more Star Wars movies and will you screw this up?
Right. So the Disney film thing, I think people are afraid, like you said, and maybe a little illogically, about Disney interposing Disney film style on Disney, on franchises that are not Disney. But that's only one very, very small part of what Disney's been able to do. As you mentioned, they've acquired a number of things over the years. I mean, they do theme parks really, really well. And it's not just like Disney characters. Technically, yeah, they're Disney characters because they're owned by Disney, or they have rights to certain characters. And they've already done things with Star Wars in that respect. But I mean, look at this. Disney's huge, right? But $4 billion is nothing to sneeze at. They want to make money. And they know that in order to do that, they have to keep their the loyal fan base very, very happy. They're not going to be putting, I don't foresee product placement in the movies or anything inappropriate like that. I think they are really good storytellers most of the time. They have done that very well, and I think they're going to just be doing something with the Star Wars franchise and doing more with it than even Lucas has been doing, especially in his later years. He made episodes 1 through 3, and that was like, over the last decades
I think-
almost. You know, like
Episode 3 was 2005, I think, so. It's been a
yeah,
while.
it's been a while. Yeah, so in order to make the franchise grow, they're going to have to be doing more with it, and I think that's what we're going to be seeing. More aggressive expansion, to use the words of the Joker.
Yeah, and I think we can look at some of the things that they've got planned. I mean, they've been looking to do a Star Wars television series, a live-action television series for quite a while now. So hopefully, with Disney involved, maybe that'll move along faster, and we'll get to see that sometime soon. Because it's been in development, we haven't really heard anything about the progress towards it. But to think about current television, Clone Wars is on Cartoon Network. I don't want to get too much into our opinion about the Clone Wars. You guys feel very strongly about it. But it's kind of interesting to speculate what Disney's ownership will do, since it is on Cartoon Network, and if there will be like a shift to Disney XD, or if it will have to be canceled, or if there will be like a new Star Wars animated series in the same vein as that. What are you guys thinking?
Well, they've already canonized the Clone Wars, so whatever they do, it's going to be a sticky situation. They have to tread carefully. But I'm pretty confident that Disney knows how to deal with non-movie media very, very well. In the past, they've done well, like Josiah brought up, like dealing with their products. They're good at just making the fan base happy with the other options that they have out there. LucasArts has made a great empire with merchandising and all that.
Yeah.
But Disney, I mean, they're just larger already. They have much more experience with rides, clothing lines, action figures, that sort of thing.
They have a lot more clout to put into advertisement. I mean, Star Wars is beloved, the world over, but I think that Disney could really make it huge. I mean, it could really become a huge part of the Disney legacy.
Oh, and kill the Clone Wars.
Yeah, that needs to happen.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's in its 5th season now.
Yeah,
so,
I think so. 4th or 5th. Yeah.
So
that's a good number, right?
I don't know how long it can go on, considering the small space of time that it occupies.
Well, what they do is what they've been doing for the last couple of weeks is they'll spend like half a season on one battle. It could go indefinitely.
You could go on for a while. But
Sure.
honestly, they could end the story because they started with Anakin very close to where he is in Episode 3. Unlike the last Clone Wars series, which started with Anakin like pretty much right after Episode 2. So they had the entire span of the war to tell if they wanted to. This one is kind of like the tail end of the war. So if they want to end it, just end it well, and I won't be heartbroken. Even though I am a fan of the series, I think certain people are a little bit too critical of it. Given the landscape of cartoons right now, you can't really point to too many that really stand up to Clone Wars in terms of quality.
Do we want to debate that?
That is a story for another
Not in
time.
this video.
Okay.
So what else do we have to talk about?
Video game. See, I think
We could talk about expectations for the new movies, like what era
Yeah.
we think they're going to try to handle.
that's true, but I'm curious, and maybe this is just a really simple answer. There's a simple answer to this. Do you think that Disney will ever do an R-rated movie?
No.
Granted, like Lucasfilm has never done that either, but I think they almost could. I think they could.
I can't see an R-rated Star Wars.
There's,
I mean,
they'd lose a lot of money if they
Yeah.
did. They did lose some money on Episode 3 being PG-13. I know that they were worried about it being rated PG-13. It did well, but
Yeah.
when you go up in the ratings, movies do lose a lot.
yeah. Like, Star Wars is kind of a family franchise, even though it does go dark at times. And
It does. I mean,
But it's so-
maybe not quite R, but I guess they've done PG-13. So
Let's keep
like I said,
the
there's probably a
movie-
simple answer to that
I
question.
mean, let's keep some arms and legs and hands being cut off in every episode. Will be good.
I mean,
I
you
would be okay with
you can always have maturity in PG-13 movies. I mean, you look at the Christopher Nolan franchise, you have Lord of the Rings.
True.
You've got quality storytelling in those. So I think if you look at popular franchises like Wolverine, you're never going to see an R-rated Wolverine movie. Like, well, maybe never. Maybe
sure.
not never.
They
I'll
had an
fingers.
M-rated video game.
I'll
They,
cross
they
my
did.
fingers.
They did have
But-
R-rated Punisher movies.
Yes, but how well did they do?
Well,
They were punished for that. That's for sure.
when you want to make like a huge blockbuster,
Yeah.
most of the time you're not going to make it PG R-rated. Like even Die Hard was on PG-13 with the last two.
Yeah.
And I think Terminator Salvation was PG-13. Terminator 3 might have been.
Gladiator was not.
But Like, what was the budget
Gladiator
for
was
Gladiator?
pretty awesome. What was that?
What was the budget for that?
I don't know, Ridley Scott movie.
It was for Gladiator. Well, I believe the budget was whatever you had to do to get Russell Crowe, and that's all it needed.
Yeah, I mean, for
Get
big
some
like
chariot races.
for big like special effects driven movies like Star Wars, I can't imagine them ever going to R because it's just so much money. You need to make so much
That's
money.
true.
It is for family.
This does go into a little bit of what the next question was, which was what do we think the next trilogy will be about, though? It's been suggested on the Wikipedia article that the movies might tackle the period between 20 and 30 years after the Battle of Yavin. Now that's Yuuzhan Vong invasion, or Yuuzhan Vong, however you pronounce it. That's probably as R-rated as it gets. There's some stuff in the comics that maybe goes about as far, if not further, but that's pretty much the limit. I could see room for that, but I don't think an R-rated film is necessary. I think that would be gratuitous. I think it could be done very artfully. I mean, like, in A New Hope, you have the interrogation scene of Princess Leia. You know exactly what's going on. Well, actually, you don't, and that's part of why it's scary, and yet, it maintained, it's family-friendly reading. So, if it's done artfully, I think it doesn't need that.
I feel like back then, they let a lot more get into those movies.
There was mass genocide.
When you see the corpse of Uncle Owen. The burning corpses there.
Yeah.
Just charred
I don't think that could be a
skeletons.
PG movie these days. But,
No, that would have been PG-13 at least.
Yeah, at least.
Probably. So,
But it's okay.
Yeah, my knowledge of the expanded universe isn't really that great. And I'm wondering how much they will really expect what is in place with that for these movies. Because, I feel like it's a small portion of the population that actually has enough knowledge on that to really call them out on the continuity flaws that they might do with that. So, I'm wondering if they really care in writing these movies.
well, think of how.
The crowd fans.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are going to be passing it down to the next generation, which is what Lucas wants. What he needs is to not have this be a fun time. It needs to be an American tradition, or a science fiction tradition. In order for that to happen, you need to have that little fan base. The same thing with The Lord of the Rings, the same thing for Star Wars. Though the comparison there, maybe I shouldn't make on YouTube. As far as the extended universe goes, I don't know, where do you think that they could go? I mean, I think the first, episodes 1 through 3, they came from like one line in A New Hope, maybe 2 lines, where he mentions the Clone Wars, and that's it.
Well, following George Lucas's pattern, if Disney decides to go that route, in the original trilogy, they followed Luke and Leia from a relatively young age through to maturity, and then going back into the prequel trilogy, they followed Anakin Skywalker from around, I think it was 9 or 10, and to his maturity, and then of course all the way through the original trilogy. So if they go to 20, 30 years, they'd be messing with 10-year-old, Jason, Solo type era. There are some kids to work with there. It could be pretty juvenile. We could see another Phantom Menace, which is what I'm most horrified thinking about. But if they take, if they're there, that's fine for the kids to grow up with, as long as they focus on the older adults in the movies, like Mara Jade, perhaps.
So, let's say,
Yeah.
20 years from now,
Yeah.
you've got like roughly, 45-year-old Luke?
Yep.
So,
45-year-old, 55-year-old Grandmaster, I believe at that point, Luke Skywalker.
So,
Grandmaster of the Jedi Order. He's married Mara Jade Skywalker. Leia and Han get married. Sorry, spoiler alert. And they have kids. They have twins, and there's a lot.
There's a lot
I think.
books in this.
Yeah. So you were talking about how the first 3 episodes were supposed to be about corruption. The next 3 would be about redemption, I guess you could say. I think where they could go with the next 3 is reconstruction. Rebuilding the Republic, that was something that was suggested on Wikipedia. I don't know how much you could get into the, sort of state building themes.
Yeah.
During a Yuuzhan Vong invasion, I don't know if you could really do that so well, because they're also fighting the Empire at the same time. I would like them to explore that. Maybe have this invasion on the side. I don't know. maybe we can explore like how we're going to keep, you know, you have this Republic at the end of the Return of the Jedi. It's implied that with the Empire gone, you have the Republic reestablished. So I almost get the sense from the extended universe of this theme of, okay, now you have a Republic, let's see if you can keep it. And I think that could be really interesting to see, especially given you know, current political you know, controversies and, you know, where the United States in particular is going. And, you know, maintaining democracy, and, you know, are we becoming too socialist, things like that. You know, how do we come back from being an empire? Literally, the galaxy is imperial. How do we come back from that? That could be very interesting.
I think that it is an interesting thing, but not to take away from that.
No.
I think with Star Wars, you have to consider it is very character driven. So who are we focusing on? What is their personal story to this? I think that is an important thing to answer. It's like, are we still centering it on Luke in his old age?
Well, you can't do it without a Skywalker. That much is clear. The Solos are now really involved with the Skywalkers.
Talking about Star Wars.
Oh yeah, episode 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I was saying, you can't do the movies without a Skywalker. That would just be wrong. Just wrong. The Skywalker line is paramount to the success. Solos are really intertwined with them. You know, there are favorite characters that you have to have in there, like C-3PO,
Yeah.
R2-D2, Chewbacca. Sadly, Yoda is gone, but he'll be with them in spirit, I'm sure. In some
They
form or
can easily just have the ghosts show up, because they do that like at random times throughout episode 96. So
And
if they wanted Yoda, they could.
They could get Yoda, yeah.
I mean, they should let sleeping dogs lie or
Frank-
dead Yodas die.
Frank Oz is like what?
He could play it well.
He is Yoda.
So
Yeah.
can't say they do it.
But yeah, the expanded universe, there are many cyclical themes. They always go through a corruption, then some form of redemption, then reconstruction. That is shown again and again through the extended universe. They're often conquered by some form or another of an empire, like 4 or 5 times, and it has been rebuilt. So, I mean, there isn't just two republics, there isn't just the old and the new. There have been multiple old republics. So, and there are going to be multiple new ones. I mean, we know eventually in the future there is an empire.
Right,
again.
right. So there's a resurgence of the Empire later on, you know, that fall back into corruption. But in the meantime, I really do want to see the reconstruction of the Jedi Order. That's something, I mean, we have to see. What role does that play now? I think with the Clone Wars, the idea with the Clone Wars was have the Jedi turn against their own beliefs, essentially, and destroy them from within. Anakin is emblematic of this, but in reality, if Anakin had never betrayed the Jedi would have essentially died out because of the Clone Wars. It became a war of attrition, and the Jedi could not sustain it for a number of reasons. Just the nature of the Force and war, it doesn't really coincide with their philosophical beliefs. So, with the reconstruction of the Republic, you know, the Jedi were always the guardians of the peace, the guardians of the Republic, but that led to their downfall. It suggested. So what role will they play 20, 30 years afterwards when, you know, there is very little lore of the Jedi due to Palpatine's, you know, him expunging the Jedi from galactic records, you know, things like that, you know. So Luke really has this challenge of having to create this new identity of the Jedi Order, and how to interpret, like his interpretation of the Force, his philosophy of the Force is going to be different. So there could be that philosophical side as well as the political side of the Jedi.
I'm really looking forward to that, especially the philosophical part, because it hasn't really been touched on too much. There are a lot of books in that area, but the rebuilding of the Jedi Order will be interesting to see in its entirety, and not just split up among a whole bunch of different series.
Yeah, right.
Any other major points?
Let's have a Marvel and Star Wars crossover.
Well, that is one of the things I wanted to get into before we end.
Yeah.
Summer 2015, kind of crazy. Got Avengers 2 coming, Star Wars Episode 7, Justice League, and possibly Avatar 2. So
I hadn't heard that.
kind of crazy.
So much money.
So I mean,
Not a crossover though, right?
No.
Okay.
No,
I was
not at
kidding
all.
about that.
But-
that would be awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, post Avatar, I think that's like one of the biggest science
Disney-
fiction movies of the past decade. So
Disney owns Star Wars, then Star Wars comics can move from Dark Horse to Marvel.
that is true.
Maybe. That could be interesting. Have some very interesting artists and storytellers moving into that, if they can do that. But my understanding now is that the people who are working on Star Wars are going to remain the people who are going to work on Star Wars.
I think so.
And people who are working on Marvel, they didn't really shift anything around. I'm not entirely sure what the financial arrangement was, but my feeling is Disney can just make the franchises bigger, and they don't really want to mess around with it too much because they understand that these are very fan-base driven fan bases. Someone like Mickey Mouse can kind of change over the years as needed. But the basic story of Spider-Man can't change. The basic premise of Star Wars and the Force, that's not going to change.
And any speculation on casting? I don't think we will see Mark Hamill.
I would love to see Mark Hamill as the Grandmaster, Luke Skywalker. I would love to see that. Maybe have him do some voice acting for some of the puppets.
I am almost always indifferent between casting.
Puppet CGI.
Yeah, the CGI though is concerning. Let's just hope we don't have another Phantom Menace on our hands.
In terms of what? In terms of
Really the writing. It doesn't. I don't really care who acts it as long as the writing is good, not too juvenile.
I care who acts it.
so do I.
Everyone who's played Anakin sucked.
Well,
I'm
okay,
sorry,
Darth
Hayden
Vader.
and other kid from
Original trilogy. Don't forget, he's still Anakin in the original trilogy.
I know.
That was well done.
Yeah. We're going to throw this out there. I think everybody's going to disagree with me. If Luke is the right age for this movie, I think Matt Damon can play Luke Skywalker.
Matt Damon?
Yes. It's kind of an out of the box choice there, but I think you could do it.
May the Force be with us.
Here's the thing, though. We have the old actors still alive. I don't think they're going to use anyone else.
Really?
Unless the actors refuse. Unless the script does not call for their age.
I mean, if you're centering it on Luke playing Han, do we really want to watch these 60-year-old people running around?
Oh, we already know Harrison Ford can do it.
Do we really?
Oh, we're getting into that now.
Yeah, before we end. Disney owns the rights to Indiana Jones now too. So they haven't announced any plans for that, but we could possibly see another year.
I think we will. I don't think it's going to have Harrison Ford, though.
I honestly think I'd like to see an Indiana Jones prequel more than a sequel.
Well, we know that they like to throw in aliens in Indiana Jones movies, so maybe some Star Wars. You never know.
Indiana Jones on the new super weapon.